My name is Rosemary Dorricott. I was a little girl in the war. I was 6 years old when the war broke out, and we had to put blackouts up, curtains up, to make sure that no light was showing. And during the war, I went to school in Skegness, eventually to Skegness Grammar School. And Skegness was the home of the Navy, because they were at Butlin's holiday camp, which has been turned into a training camp for sailors. There were all nationalities there. So it was a very good target for the enemy. So we got quite a few raids. Lots of sad and tragic things happened. I lost 2 friends during the war through bombing. One was a little boy aged 7 years old, little Barry Evans. And he was my very, very dearest little friend. And I really loved him. He was really lovely. And I sat next to him at school. That was when I was in the infant school, in the junior school. And he was there one day. And the next day he wasn't at school. And a bomb had completely demolished his house, and his family were killed. And that was the first sad thing I knew of the war. The next thing was when I was at grammar school. I was about a 2nd year, and the girl in about 3rd, 4th year I knew quite well. They lived on a farm, and one of the crippled Lanks landed on their farm, and the whole family and the crew were killed. That was another tragic thing that happened in the war. But apart from that, it didn't touch me terribly, apart from the fact that we were deprived of all sorts of things like ice cream and bananas and oranges. And but we lived well on what we had, and we lived a very, very, very healthy life. Another occasion that I remember is when it was in the night, and there was a raid going on, and the whole room, although we had blackout curtains, was lit up with light. And Mother sort of just opened the curtains to see what was happening. And there we saw an airman on fire coming down and landing. And she said, "Don't look, don't look." But we couldn't help but peep, and said, "You saw this human torch coming down." That was another tragic, terrible thing. Whether it was on our side or their side, I don't know. But it was just another tragic part of the war. My father had died in 1939 from injuries from the First World War, and because he was poison gassed. And so although he was able to put up the blackout curtains, he went down to London to have an operation to see exactly how he was. And it had been evacuated out to the countryside. So he died during that operation. And that was in 1939. He had put the blackout curtains, so that was a start, losing my father in that tragic circumstances from the First World War, which was sad. But we went through the war quite happily, the 3 of us against the world, my sister, my mother and I, and we battled on through the war and got over it. Like so many people, we didn't lose anybody in the war. So no fathers and brothers or anything like that. So we were very lucky in that respect. Yeah.
Did your father ever talk much about his experiences in the First World War?
Well, he was 17 when he went to St Paul's School, and there was I think the regiment was attached with the London Scottish Regiment, and he went straight in at 17. And he was injured very quickly after he went over, because they were poison gassed, and so they were invalided out. And then, of course, he died from the effects of that in 1939. So there was not a lot of exploits during the First World War for him to tell us about, because he was injured so quickly. I think they just got in and they came up against all this poison gas. So he hadn't got anything much to say apart from the fact that he was in a hospital bed. So that was it. That was his exploit.
Sadly, your father died in 1939.
Yes.
How did your mother cope with that?
Well, she was a very stalwart lady, so you can imagine she coped beautifully during the war with us. She took did a little insurance round because the men were at the war, and she used to go all round the countryside and the country lanes and everything with a little insurance thing, and that's how we went to the war. I went to school, enjoyed school. I did singing, and my sister did singing, and piano lessons. She joined the GTC when she was 14. That was the girls' training corps, and I went to elocution lessons. We belonged to the choir at the little church, beautiful little Norman church. And we belonged to the choir there, and we got confirmed in it. Just normal life. So we were quite happy, and we enjoyed simple pleasures, but enjoyed them. So that was what life was like during the war for me.
When you were at school in Skegness during the Second World War, do you think the war actually affected your schooling?
Not at all, no. I don't think so. We just carried on as normal. And the teachers were just the same. And we had a few evacuees that came from Holland and Belgium, and they joined our classes. But apart from that, it was all just normal. There was nothing to really indicate that there was a war really going on. Teachers were just teaching the same lessons. The headmaster used to break into a lesson just to tell us how the war was going on, what was happening. And but apart from that, that was all there was. We didn't really notice it, which was very, very good, because it did keep a perspective, a nice level of our lives, so that there was no problems at all with that. And just a few memories here that I have recorded and written down, and so I will now read that. Childhood memories, aged 9. We stood in the garden in silence and waited as dusk drew near. Then the heavy throbbing of engines broke into the tranquility of a summer's night. It was wartime, a time of austerity and uncertainty, but the beautiful summer's air belied the horrors of what war could bring. The heavy engines roared over our heads as they gradually rose into the night sky to their deadly destinations. It was hard to believe those graceful machines could be the bearers of destruction, but that was war and the means of our salvation. We thought of those young men going into the unknown, whose mission it was to successfully accomplish the task they so bravely took on. We counted each majestic machine, heavy with their bomb load, and said a prayer for each one. And then the summer's night returned to its tranquil peacefulness, as if there had been no disruption. It was dawn before we heard the first sounds of aircraft returning. The sounds had changed, some with spluttering engines as they limped home. Large gaps appeared in the order of their flight, and we knew, as we counted them back, that some would not return.